Okay, everybody. Welcome to this session. We're going to do two things in this session. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about the hub and its stakeholders, who really are people who are in non-academic institutes. Most of them are companies. Some of them are sort of quasi-companies like the BBC, and some of them are arms of government or the regulator like Ofcom and people like that. And they're all interested in AI, and they're particularly interested in foundational aspects of AI, which are going to change the AI environment as we all go forward. So anything we say might be lethal for them, so therefore they're interested to see what we've got to say and to have some input and to take away some output. So we'll talk about those a little bit. And particularly I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of our hub, lovely PDRAs, and particularly the sorts of things you should do and the sorts of things you should be thinking about. And in Tom's case, his motivation in talking to stakeholders and stuff like that. And then we're going to draw a line at probably about 35 minutes through that. And then we're going to talk about some wider issues of what I would call professional skills for PDRAs. Okay. So let's start. So the hub has a list of stakeholders. I'm not going to list them out for you today, but they're all up on the splendid website. And there's a range of them for you to have a look at. And if you feel, as a result of what sorts of things I'm going to talk about today, that you'd like to be involved in some interactions with those people, then you can either talk to me and I'll put you in touch with the requisite people, or you can talk to Melanie and she'll put you in touch with the requisite people, or you can just go completely off-piste and try and contact them with hopefully a polite email about something you're doing. So let's turn the thing around. Well, there's an EPSRC, UKRI funded hub with a whole load of research going on at umpteen universities. There's lots of lovely PDRAs, there's lots of COIs and a PI, and we're all working very, very hard. Why would a company want to engage with us? Why would any company anywhere ever want to engage with a university? What do you think the motivations?
Hire people?
They might want to hire us, yeah. They might want to hire people. Why else might they want to work with? Why else might companies want to work with university research groups?
Do you want to say what engagement actually means here?
No, I'm going to talk to you that in a minute.
Can I be cynical?
Yeah.
Because they want to get some cheap way of developing. They find something out from us that will make them no money.
Yes, they've got shareholders and they certainly want to make money. Actually, the government, the BBC doesn't want to make money. They want to spend money more efficiently.
But I mean, so we come up with something that's extremely useful to them. They basically get first access to it.
Well, you're protected a little bit. It's a great question. Right? It's a great question. You'll all be signing PDRA forms, and so your employees at the university, wherever you are, so you'll be subject to the IP statutes of those universities. So I can't talk to the other universities, but at Oxford, say, that means if you invent stuff, you should declare it to your line managers, i.e. your line managers or the PI or the COI you're working for, and you should make them aware that you've discovered something that's potentially valuable. And then Oxford will protect you. Your university will protect you. In fact, that's a duty. It's little known. So PDRAs, good habits for PDRAs. I'll give you 3 good habits which will keep you compliant with anybody's IP policy. So number 1, you should have a bound book, which is a bit like a lab book, and try and keep a record, almost like a diary of the things you're doing. The dates are important in a bound book, right? So, 22nd of May, sat down with Pete Grindrod and we, thought of a new way to do something and and you've got a sort of date stamp on them. If you believe that to be valuable, you've got all these things. There are lots of things in my band book that aren't very valuable, incredibly. But you've got a date stamp. So keep a log of what you're doing. It can be an electronic log, but I like a band book because you can't fill it. Right? Secondly, when you're working in research, always make sure that all of your outputs, whether they're online, whether they're on GitHub or something like that, that your line managers have access to those outputs. So if you should befall some terrible disaster or something like that, then somebody else has access to you. But they're not going to poke around and do it. They've all got day jobs. But in general, you should do that. Okay? And the third thing you should do is that commonly you shouldn't get into what we would call informal conversations at conferences and things like that about other people's work. So if somebody comes up and says, well, what's Pete up to these days? What's he working on? You say, oh yeah, he's doing X, Y, Z. That's what he's doing. You know, this is pub talk really, but you should avoid it. Right? You have a duty of care to the university that is your employer. I'm not going to say any more about that, but I'm saying those three things will keep it clean. Right? Because you can always go back to when you first thought of something. You've got a document that says that other people have got access to it in case there's some mishap, or they can control access to it, and you've got some kind of discipline that says that we're not going to routinely talk about unpublished work, particularly unpublished work of other people. That's a bit odd because when we go to conferences, we all say, what are you working on? We all tell our friends at conferences. Okay, but try and keep it to yourself. Don't really talk about other people. That's just advice. If you want to go away and lose half a day of your life, you can go and read the statutes of your university and you'll discover what you're actually signing up to, which could be worse. Okay. Why else would companies like to come and work with us? Apart from the cynical.
Allowing research interests.
Yeah. I've worked for 20 years in companies, and when you're in a company, it's quite clear what the role of public funding of science and research is. There are certain things in companies that you could never do because it's too fundamental. And when you say to your shareholders, say, I'd like to have a group that's looking at the fundamentals of AI, please, and looking at seeing if we can apply topological data analysis to figuring out what's going on. So, the shareholder's going to say, well, how much is that worth? You go, we don't know. We don't know. It's open-ended, it's explorative, it's long-term. They go, no, I don't think so. Can we just get on with this over here? We need that for next Tuesday. Right. So there's an element of short-termism that has to take place because in companies, you have to justify to your shareholders what you're doing. And they turn taps off as quickly as they turn taps on. Very, very different from the environment we're in. So companies, and particularly British companies, rely on UKRI to seed research at low technology readiness levels. Google TRL, see what I mean? We're about 1 to 3. Past 3, 4, 5 is like prototype, is proof of concept, and then 5, 6, 7 would be prototyping, and then we get towards operational technology level. So we can be at fundamentals, which is largely 1 to 3, and that's where the research councils are. It's very difficult for companies to justify doing that research because it's long-term, it's open-ended. Why would they want to muck about with the university? Well, the university is full of bright people. Any here today? It's full of people with very different skill sets who can come together. They've already got some momentum because the public funding has given them some momentum. And if you can show them a problem that's exciting enough for them, they'll start working on it Monday. Imagine if you're a company, you say, we want to do something with, TDA and fundamentals of AI. Well, we better go and employ some of those people. Ring up HR, that's going to take 6 months to get an advert out and get people in. And come along to a university. If it's an interesting problem, we'll start Monday. Right? What else? Well, they gain access to a large range of intellectual diversity. Kind of done that one. Everyone in industry has a day job. It's quite difficult to get 3 people, pull them off the day job and say, right, you're on the X project now. You're on this. Whereas actually, if the thing was interesting enough, we would flex and do that. In actual fact, companies can often apply for research money. They're called smart grants and things like that from the government. They can apply. And to do that, they usually need partners, like universities. So if they have a relationship with a university, then that's great for them. Wide and wise networking. Companies like networking. If something lethal happens, they might say, well, we'd really like to trial that. I've had people ring me up and say, look, we'd really like to apply some of your work. Can we come and see you? So you come down and you sign an NDA and then you discuss how and what terms and things like that. Companies need to network. It's a kind of insurance against the unknown unknowns. So there are known knowns, there are known unknowns. Those are questions that we're trying to resolve. And then there are unknown unknowns. Right? The only thing we know about the unknown unknowns is that they're out there. That's all we know. And suddenly one turns up and there's a disruption. And you were quite happily making Coca-Cola or quite happily putting on television programs or quite happily running digital e-commerce systems. And then some unknown turns up, maybe in the shape of a competitor changing the game. And companies think, what are we going to do now? In the great words of Ghostbusters, who are they going to call? Actually, they're going to call people in their network. Say, look, this thing's just happened. You need to come in while we just discuss this. You might know something that could help us. Stuff like that. So they'll often, rather than directly want to pinch something that we're currently doing, that's a low probability event. Someone from industry walking in, they're interested in exactly what I'm working on. That's very low. But actually, lots of people ring you up. They go, oh, we just had something awful happen. You know, Pepsi Cola have just done this, and now it's changed the game. And we need something else. And And they say, come on, let's have a chat about it. So this is called Open Innovation Networking. It used to be that companies would like to do all their research themselves, hire PhDs, have an R&D group. That's very expensive and long term. If you build aircraft engines, you can do that. It takes 12 years to produce an aircraft engine, or it takes 12 years to produce a drug or something. You can do that. But we're tending to work in AR, and that supports fast-moving, fast-growth sectors of the economy. Right? So there isn't time to do all that. So it's actually quite natural that most of the companies who are in our space, development, exploitation of AI, that kind of thing, would be quite keen to get along. And so they go open innovation network, and that means that they accept that innovation can come from universities, it can come from individuals, it can come from startups, it can come from their hated competitors, whatever. There's always days when we can sit down and talk with our competitors. So what I want you to think about is a company has a duty really to know what's going on out there, and that's sort of open innovation networking. General Stanley McChrystal said it takes a network to beat a network. If you haven't got a network, you can't take on a network. And largely, customers, markets, economy, society is a big network. You can't attack a network with a pyramid. The army's a pyramid. Most universities are pyramids, aren't they? Oxford's a donut. There's nothing in the middle. Topology of university superstructure. Don't read what's happening, just see where the money is. Topology. Okay. Now, I'm giving out these books, and the reason is not self-aggrandizement. These are early notes of a book that became a book, and it's a fantastic book. It's a fantastic book. Everybody should buy it from every publisher. Not for the video, is that it's very expensive. But these were some of the core notes. It's not quite all of it. And so all these terms like TRLs and open innovation networking, they're all explained in there, and the various sections. And there's also lots of good jokes. And it touches on some of the skills I'm going to talk about later. So you're welcome to have that. There is a proper book, and it's got more things in it, but that will be for today. So, why do non-academics engage with academics? They want these benefits. They recognise that there's research going on in universities like all of ours that can't take place in their own company, and yet they want the benefit of those things. It might be to know what doesn't work. I'll save us a lot of money if you tell people what doesn't work. Right, so they need to task up multidisciplinary teams to do stuff that they can't do themselves in any real time. They need to have a network to defend themselves against the unknown unknowns, because they're out there, that's what we know. Okay. When they talk to us, that's what they're thinking. That's really what they're thinking. They might have come down to talk about a particular project, but actually they're listening, and that's what they're thinking. Okay, when we interact or meet with stakeholders, it's always interesting to try and, look behind the contents. They come and do a presentation. So this is the way we at the company XYZ does this. And this is why we're interested. And here's some of our greatest hits. No one wants greatest hits, do they? So to have the job, he does greatest hits. Right. Right. So boast about, that's called corporate boasting. Do that. But just sit there and watch them and think to yourselves, why are they here? What have they really come for? They haven't come to tell us about themselves. The people love talking about themselves. It's always good to say to people, tell me what you did. How long have you worked at EMR? What's going on at Marks and Spencer's these days? Think to yourself, what are they seeking really? What do they really want? They're giving us a clue. Are you aligned with them? What does that mean? That means that they've come along and they're maybe looking for something. And, does it involve people like me, or am I just a sort of first stop on a more important meeting they're going to have later on this afternoon? This is one I really like. I always ask this when I meet people in industry. Did they spontaneously say something which I believe? Because if they just talk about their greatest hits and talk about their lovely research group, we've got a nice campus, that's great. But do they spontaneously say something that you and your colleagues believe? Did they say, oh, I believe that the way to understand the fundamentals of AI is this. Yeah, we do that. Yeah. If they don't, it means it's going to be education all the way. All the way. You're going to have to teach them everything you know. Not just going to get in the way. How much time have we got? So it's good to say, did they spontaneously blurt out something that we believe? That's a great test. These are non-verbal signals that you should be picking up. What would success look like for them? What does success look like for them? Is it killing Kodak? Is that what they're trying to do? Is it incorporation of new technology that they don't currently have and that their competitors don't have? Is it building a new activity or a new enterprise? Taking or spinning out? What do they actually do? What does success look like? You see, one of our problems in universities is that we can't afford to do sort of week-long projects. It's not very interesting. We have them, there's study groups and things like that, but we can't really afford a lot of them because they're really just training. And we really want projects that, sort of 3 months to 6 months, that kind of thing, up to 3 years, because 3 years is the time scale on, a PDRA role or a PhD project or something like that. So it's very difficult for us to take on projects which are 10 years. It's very difficult for us to take on projects of 10 minutes, I'm just saying. Don't do it. You've only got so much time. When we're dealing with industry, I have a conversation with them, and then as I'm driving home, or as I'm getting the bus stop, I think to myself, do I ever want to see those people ever again? Sometimes the answer is no. No, I don't fancy working with them. They weren't data ready. They didn't seem to have a leader. There wasn't any talk about money. They didn't show me some of their other buying signals that meant they were going to work with me. Stuff. They're just fishing. You're not doing it again. And then you can cross out the future things in the diary and you win that time back for yourself. You're just not going to do it. We get a vote. This is not compulsory. We're going to work on things that are successful. We're not going to work on just because somebody said it was a good idea. Okay. Qualify. Are they ready? Are they funded? Do they want to engage? Are they funded to collaborate? Are they, just not money for us. If they got, it's their own time. Can they afford this? I hate it when people go, "Oh, date for the next meeting then," and then someone say, "Oh, I can't do that because I'm doing the LMS library account," or "I can't do that because I'm doing that." What they're trying to say is, "I'm very important and my diary is very full," and inadvertently they're telling you what you're talking about isn't very interesting to me. So mentally, I'm crossing them out then. I'm saying, well, we're going to have the next meeting on Tuesday. If you can't, I'd say, I don't want to do that. And then they say, yes, but I've got to be. So if you don't come to the rehearsal, you can't come to the concert. There's some discipline. Right, you have to find a nice way to say it yourself, but don't use mine, right? Have they got a decision-making process? Well, they say, well, I'd have to take this to my boss, Frank, and I see him, every second Tuesday when there's no hour in the month. Have they got an incentive to perform? What's their incentive? They say that. Are the proposed next steps suitable for both sides? Now, the hub has a wide range. These are all qualification questions. Okay. Other qualification questions I love is when they say, "Who else have you talked to about this?" What does that mean? That means they're saying, "Shit, who else have they talked to about this? Am I in a queue?" Right? I like to do the same thing as well. I say, "Have you talked to anyone from the University of Cambridge about this?" I don't want my stuff going into your relationship with them. That's why we signed the NDA. That's why you agreed to look at pre-published research and keep it confidential, like I stated. Okay, so get involved. I want you each to think about spending some time with the stakeholders, look through, see which ones you fancy. Just the experience of doing that. If you haven't got a reason for meeting themselves, then what we could have is invite them in and have a general meeting and you can just sit in. And that's okay. They say, well, what's Shirley doing here? I say, well, Shirley's come to see how you behave. Yeah, they go, okay, yeah, that's okay. It's okay. You can just sit in and see how it goes and see what it feels like. And see if it gets tense when we talk about money. Right? I love talking about money. Right? See if it gets tense. Right? Right? If they said, where are you getting these overheads from? Look at your costs. Say, we don't disclose the way we cost research if we do collaborative research. Okay, but you might say, where are you getting these overheads from? And that's a buying signal. If they weren't thinking of working with you, they wouldn't be bothered about the cost of the overheads. Right? Right? So just relax. So those are the overheads we're legally required to charge. Okay, there can't be any free lunch for British taxpaying companies. Right? We've got that. Actually, we can think of overheads, but that's above my pay grade. So you just put another 3 months into the organisation of this project if you're trying to. I mean, a university could co-invest. Say, well, if we don't get the overheads, then we're co-investing. So that changes the IP situation. So that's great. It's all buying signals, isn't it? You don't have to sort that out. Some grown-ups will sort that out when we're not in the room. Doesn't just write it down. Okay, so we've got money. Jeff hates me saying this, but we've got money for stakeholder interaction. So if any of you want to go, yeah. Great stuff. So we got money, and we can do things with the stakeholders, like invite them in and stuff like that. They'll carry their own costs. They're not getting this. We can spend.
I said this like half an hour ago.
Did you? Okay. So if you want to go on visits to people and you're invited to go or things like that, or there's some expense in going, then don't use up your research travel budget. Come and use up my budget. Okay. So just reach out and ask. Okay, get involved. One of the things we're doing at the moment, which is sort of mediumly popular, I would say, is that it's become apparent that when you look at opinion formers, the media, politicians, and even funders and private investors into AI, there's a huge confusion about different types of AI and what's involved and what the technical terms all mean and things like that. And people just tend to then, the default position is to just conflate everything into a bucket called AI. And then, then it works for ITV. Good morning. We can talk about AI. It's terrible. Expecting privacy. Elton John's unhappy about it. What about generative AI? All the companies are using it now. Why are they all using it? Are we all going to lose our jobs? 250 years ago, someone invented an automatic weaving machine up in Bolton. And the weavers hated this. They were all going to lose our jobs. Oh, yeah. All the weavers had to get down the coal mines at that point. And, the progress moves us on. I mean, it's inexorable. You know, we can try and hold it back, but, you know, you're on the wrong side of history at that point, only my opinion. Only my opinion, everybody. Okay, so one of the things we're trying to do is to produce a taxonomy of AI technologies. And this is not to talk about applications. It's not a taxonomy of applications. So we could talk about the different types of generative AI, different types of discriminative and classification AI, supervised, unsupervised, different ways it works, the inner architectures, the different types of architectures we have, and things that are supposed to work well or not work well, not be spoofable, things are supposed to be explainable. That's what the future is, explainable AI. That's why we're all here. So what we want is a taxonomy that you could show to any bit of government, any opinion former, anybody in the media. Right, this is what the AI landscape looks like. And we also show it to strategists who decide what the UK's AI strategy is going to be, and have they got the right amounts of money in the right pigeonholes? Right, because we don't have a very good AI strategy. I'll be coming back to strategy later. We'll have some strategy comedy later. Okay, but so we're all trying to do this together, and Anthea at Imperial and QMU have done a great job. This is needed, right? We're going to own that. We're going to produce one of those. We're going to publish it as part of this Erlangen hub, and we're going to aim for all of the regulators, led by Ofcom, who are one of our stakeholders in the UK, to be referring to that. It'll have to be a living document because AI technology, like the mountains of Wales, aren't standing still; they're all moving, right? So that's something, another place. So you can get involved directly with the stakeholders, you've got money for that. You can get involved in trying to write the taxonomy, write to Melanie about it, she'll tell you all about it. And Tom Coates and I started.
You mean like what's NLP and what's generative? And
yeah, how it all fits together. We're trying to just draw a map.
And
I think of it as a Venn diagram, but there are others in the room who say this can't be written as a Venn diagram, in which case I then allow ML to appear in different places, or variants of ML to appear. We're trying to map it out. So we say, look, the UK has got all its potatoes at one end of the picture, right? Remember, the Turing Institute was sleeping while generative AI became successful. It existed and it didn't see it coming and it didn't really get involved. Right? Who owns AI? Who really owns AI? Who invents AI? Is it British universities? Or is it Menlo Park in California? Yeah, big tech. Right? They don't do that for free. They've got shareholders and investors, and you know, we've got the government. Okay, so anybody got any little questions about stakeholders or stakeholder interaction? I'm going to talk about skills now from now on. So that's just an introduction. You can check out who the stakeholders are, and if you've got any questions, then email us. So we'll answer questions. Yeah, go on, Rose.
Any advice on stakeholders at scales?
Well, it's good to have stakeholders of different size. Because, but the trouble is that small companies, you know, they're burning cash, and you know they don't have a lot of time to. Whereas a large company will have somebody who's close to retirement who they can send along to Oxford University for a pleasant afternoon and a dinner, right? So companies of different scales that need to be dealt with rather differently. So from startups through to SMEs through to bigger companies. And they're probably there for different reasons. So yeah, I haven't really talked about the size and scale of stakeholders, but we've got a range from small companies to super large companies. So, yeah.
I mean, I think all of your talk was very interesting, but there was a premise that is the companies are interested in us.
Yeah.
Right. How do we make that happen? How do we make?
Yeah, this is a great question.
Any investor wants to sit down with us in the first place.
Yeah.
Before judging them.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that before you're all here, some of us put some work into writing a proposal to the EPSLC, and we made sure we got some stakeholders who were interested. How did that happen? Actually, it's quite a tricky process because you sort of go to people and you say, look, we're about to do this. Do you want to come with us on this? And they go, maybe not. Or they go, actually, this sounds really interesting, this visiting with some, it's always good to tell people about stuff before you do it, because they can come and tilt the table and make it work for them and build some alignment. It's hopeless if you go, a lot of people in academia, they get big money from EPSRC. They do some research and then they go out after they're doing some research. They go out and say, look, we've done this. We've invented a square mouse. And, then they're upset when the other side don't really want to come and get involved. So the answer is that you should always try and involve people early and involve people with ideas. Remember, they're open innovation networking. They're looking for ideas. Their radar's out there. But it is a bit, it's interesting. Right. So for that reason, it's a bit of advice coming later on in the second half of the talk. But you should always have a couple of sentences in your back pocket. So when you meet somebody from industry, they say, hi, Pete. Hi, yeah. Where do you work, Pete? So I work in the Mathematics Institute, it's the home of the equals sign, 1557. And they go, what are you working on? Do I have an answer to that? What are you working on? Who are you doing that with? Do you know Jared Tanner? Yeah, I know Jared Tanner. Are you working with him? No, he doesn't want to work with me. So always have that ready, that one sentence. And remember, it only has to be good enough to open the conversation. You don't have to have a sentence that closes it. I'm working on this and we've just proved so-and-so, and we've just done. Don't close the thing down. Remember, we're looking for their ideas. That's interesting. You're doing quantum cryptography. Everybody needs it now. So yeah, we need it. We've had a thought about that. We thought we could waste a lot of money. Yeah, probably. You don't have to close the question. So everybody should be able to say, what are you working on? What are you interested in? Actually, I'm working on this, but I'm really interested in this. In the medium term, I'd like my career to go this way. So, well, listen, why have you chosen to do that? Then you say to them, what are you working on? Anybody got any more questions about stakeholders? I need to move. We've had our 35 minutes on this, so I need to move this along. Right. There's lots of other answers in this beautiful book. Don't write to me with typos. Yes, please.
Give a quick breakdown of what are the types of industries involved, like aerospace or like.
So there's some defence companies, Thales, Kinetic. They don't just do defence actually. So every time I get a speeding ticket, I have to remember that Thales really pushed automatic number plate recognition in this country, and they're somehow responsible for all my. Actually, it's not just speeding tickets. You can get a fine for doing a U-turn in the Cowley Road. Don't do it. So we've got some bio companies. We've got some companies like the BBC, obviously massive interest there. We've got some things that aren't companies, which are regulators. So there's a real mix. Capgemini have just joined in. That's their AI group, which are down in Abingdon, which is quite close to Oxford. And it's a moving feast, so some of the companies are going pop, some of the companies are turning up. Actually, they can't join for nothing, but they have to write a letter that I'm satisfied with in order to be named as a stakeholder. And that means that they're prepared to spend time with us, that they spend put effort into looking at what we're doing, give us some strategic support, review our outputs, and consider whether they want to work. There's a whole load of things that we could ask for, which they have to agree to. Anybody got any other questions? Yeah, Jeff?
Do you have maybe one fairly quick, concrete example that would be relevant for the PDRAs here of an industry engagement that was more than just they came and gave a talk, I gave a talk? Or what was exchanged concretely?
Oh, yeah. So, well, let me give you a couple. So, I was minding my own business down here, giving the talk on energy one day, and then someone said, oh, these people from Emirates Airlines have come and they want to talk about, customer data and doing things with their customers and da da da. And I said, oh, they're probably having a digital transformation. They're looking at new forms of AI, things like that. The guy said, yeah, they are. Could you come up and talk to them? And it was a black bloke from Wellington Square, that's University Central. So he brought them up to the master department, parked them in a meeting room, and I said, oh, yeah, you've got half an hour. So I went to talk to them, and sure enough, they were having a digital transformation. They were looking for innovative ideas, those sorts of application spaces, and of course the technologies to do this and things like that. And by the end of that interaction, which took a couple of hours, we all went away and agreed to meet again in Dubai in a month. And I'd go over there and talk to the heads of their programs and things like that. And we did, that turned into a relationship that was a big sort of 4-year relationship. It was worth about £6 million for us. And it involved deploying a lot of PDRAs in maths, engineering, and the Oxford Internet Institute. And we did lots of R&D that was designed to support their digital transformation. So that was one that I didn't see coming at all. But I mean, I just sort of and they gave all the buying signals that I just talked about. So there was something that the world's just changed for us. We're going to go through a digital transformation. So I say, well, what do your middle managers think of that? I said, they hate it. They hate it. They don't know what the jobs are going to be. I said, no. And what sort of thing are you looking for? Well, we're talking to Carnegie Mellon. We'd like to come and talk to you. I've had ones that have gone wrong. Ones that go wrong are much more interesting, actually, where you think something's going to happen. And then they come in and it turns out they really want something done next Tuesday. Actually, Sony was a bit like that for me this year. They wanted to talk about something. When I got to the bottom of what they wanted to talk about, it was really something that was fairly urgent, wasn't very interesting. I couldn't really see it driving any new research and things like that. So I just sort of wished well with it. I was rather disappointed, but I thought Sony Europe might be quite switched on, but they weren't really. We just put in a proposal to EPSRC to do something with tipping points in supply chains, catastrophes in supply chains. And we were turning people away, companies away who wanted to be stakeholders. So if maybe it's a combination of timeliness or topicality or something like that. But it doesn't always go well. The good thing is that we get a vote. So if you have a meeting that's not very good, you just say to yourself, I'm never going to meet those people again. Even if they meet everybody else in the university, including the Vice Chancellor, I'm not bothering. It's not fun. You get to decide. You get to decide. Qualify hard, because what's your bottleneck? What are you so? What's the thing you're most short of?
It's my time.
Time. So don't ever give your time away. If you're putting an hour into something, you should be getting something back, or have the expectation of getting something back, right?